Welcome to Season 3 of Malevolent Autopsy. I'm your host, Queen. I use she, her pronouns, and I am so excited to be here with you all. Now, let me warn you, this show contains major spoilers for everything in Malevolent as of the day this episode is published, so if you're not caught up, I'm not liable. Before we get started tonight, I'd like to ask my lovely co-host, what part of Arthur's body are you betting on getting injured this week?
Howdy, hello. I'm Vol Control. I use he, him pronouns, and this week I'm betting Arthur falls in a hole. I don't know what various and sundry injuries he'll get from that, but I think it's been too long since he's fallen into a hole.
Okay. Fair.
As for this week's chapter, we really experienced the full spectrum of human emotions in the span of about 13 minutes. We chose for John to say that he would not forgive if he were in Arthur's shoes, which doesn't surprise Arthur. Arthur's horrified to learn that John had killed tens of thousands of him, robbed countless children of their father. But he recognizes that Cain wanted this to cause the divorce to end all divorces, and he refuses. He won't let him win. Not now. Not here at the end of it all. By the time they have vowed to forgive each other and themselves, they have arrived at a field of hair. Oh, right. The dark world fucking sucks. Thanks for the reminder, Harlan. Now we are faced with the challenges of the here and now. How to approach the doll maker. Do we move forth, exposing our best asset out in the open, or do we conceal the strange glowing scar on Arthur's arm that the doll maker might covet?
Beautiful summary of such a difficult chapter.
Yeah, well, I have it, I have it written down here that my live blogging notes are like 90% quotes of dialogue from this episode because there's so many beautiful lines of dialogue and sentiments in this chapter, and I knew that we were probably going to go over all of it, so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to skip all of that in the summary. Like, we just need to know brass tacks. We just need to know the framework. I'm sure we will all get into it.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of our live blogging, I think everyone's live blogging, a lot of it comes down to just reposting lines because of the way they're delivered and how we're all just sort of echoing it together and how much it makes you feel just by restating the phrase. It's very interesting. I saw everybody kind of repeating the same lines together. It was great.
Yeah. And I'm sure that Harlan can appreciate his own talent, but sometimes I wonder, like, are there lines that he writes that turn out to be really memorable bangers that he's like, oh, I didn't even realize that was going to be the, like, takeaway or the profound moment that y'all were going to keep repeating?
Probably both. I'm sure it's a little bit of both, because I have a feeling that a lot of this chapter, I think we've heard Harlan say before, he doesn't really premeditate many lines.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of this is done until he literally sits down to write it all out in one shot. And first of all,
which is insane, bonkers. Yeah.
Fucking nuts. But also, like, I've never written any other way either, so I totally get it. If I don't write everything in one go, it doesn't happen. Right. So, like, I'm not capable of coming back and doing parts of things and all that. So I totally get it. But also, I know that he has some lines probably tucked away in his back pocket. I'm sure he has to make notes about, like, okay, John said this specific thing here, and I should probably, that's going to be really good to reference when Arthur reacts to it.
Right.
Yeah, so it's very impressive.
Yeah. But the thing that's really impressive to me is that Harlan does have this skill for capturing these really big emotions or big feelings into really, like, poignant prose, but it doesn't feel like forced or like overacted or anything. It doesn't feel like, oh, that's the line. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it really helps that he is such a good actor. He is such a phenomenal, like to the point where I can't believe that he's not in shows and movies. And like the fact that he doesn't have why wasn't he a voice in Arcane or like
Right.
any of the big animated adult productions of different wonderful shows that are out there, because he's so good at conveying such a range of emotion on top of having so many voices he can do that sound so distinct from his own. He just sounds like he's the perfect candidate for a really solid voice actor to have on a team.
For real, for
And
real.
especially with this chapter, and I know there's been so many chapters like it that I've personally said, I'm sure on Autopsy too, these really deeply emotional scenes feel so real that I genuinely forget this is not a character and this has not really happened. And
Yeah.
this is all completely fiction, and it's a guy pretending to like being in that
Right,
mindset
right.
of the character. And I was talking in the chat before saying like I wonder if he like how he prepares to get into this role and this headspace. And I know that he's talked about how he gets into the voices of characters, but when we're talking about like a week between chapters, or even sometimes 3 or 4 days, even if he records early, how do you get to that place of hysteria that Arthur was in, and that
Right.
like that visceral crying emotion? How do you jump there? Does he think about something? Does he try and like read back in his notes or something? Like I would be so interested in how he gets to that headspace to pull off this performance.
Yeah, yeah, I was thinking about that too, especially because I'm so like immersed in the moment, in the, just in the moment of the scene, because like I can't even begin to fathom what my reaction would be if I was in Arthur's situation. And it's so incredible how much like humanity and realism and real heart and real like gut-wrenching pain Harlan is able to bring to this completely impossible fictional moment that, no one would have to necessarily face this. No one would find themselves in this situation. But I also thought about how Harlan has been with these characters in his head, in his heart for so long that I think that he, honestly, I almost wonder if he just gets into the headspace of Arthur Lester, and that makes it easy for him to act out that kind of raw emotion.
Yeah, and I guess if I'm thinking about it, characters that I've been writing for years, if you ask me to read their lines out loud from any point in their story that I've written so far, yeah,
Yeah.
I could probably get there just because of how long I've been with that character. So that does make a lot of sense. I'm sure it comes a lot easier to him than it would if they were still new characters, or like if it was a D&D group, I think maybe the performance would be a little bit less sure.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, I've seen some of Harlan's DMing, and he's just so good at he just fully commits to whatever he's doing in such a skilled and professional way. It's so inspiring to me. It very much makes me miss acting and like having the opportunity to deliver lines like this. I think there were so many good ones. Do you want to just rattle off a few of them, and I'll take my turn and we can go back and forth?
Okay. Well, my carrot that I decided on, I didn't try to be sneaky and put like three in there. The carrot that I decided on was the way that John asks Arthur what he's supposed to do with this guilt. And that
Yeah.
conversation was so intimate because it was a moment where John is like acknowledging that he's having this painful feeling that he doesn't know what to do with. And even though Arthur is the victim that caused that guilt, he knows and he trusts his friend that he can ask Arthur how he's supposed to handle this. And Arthur doesn't even miss a beat. He doesn't even hesitate. He gives him this like honest, heartfelt advice. And that moment was just, oh, it was everything.
Yeah, it was beautiful, and it was very relatable, I think. I imagine to a lot of people. I guess I personally still struggle with, yeah, I'm a very avoidant of negative emotions. And so I get very much like, okay, how do I fix this? How do I make this go away? How do I stop feeling this way? And I don't really appreciate that some things just take time to get over, and some things, like, it's not that simple. And grief has been one of them. When you experience death in your life, or really the death of a relationship or anything that is associated with grief, it's very much like that isn't something that goes away. You unfortunately, it's not as simple as you finish grieving and then you'd never have to worry about that again. And that's been really, really hard to deal with. Like, realizing that it's not a checklist. You don't just go through the stages of grief and then get your grief certificate, and
right,
you
right.
don't ever
graduate.
have to.
You don't
Yeah.
graduate from grief.
Yeah. And I loved that John had that moment, and that John still turned to Arthur, who is the one that he hurt, to ask him for this, because it really reinforced they truly do not have anybody but each other.
Yeah. The only thing we didn't have was the other to pull us back.
Oh my God. Ah. Ah.
Another line that I love, not only the sentiment but also the delivery, when Arthur says, "I wish I was there to help take it away. In a way, I guess I was." And he laughs. Oh my God.
Oh.
Arthur's
talk about
speed
twisting
running.
the fucking knife. I'm gonna just salt this wound and then jab my fist into it over and over again.
Oh my God. So good.
I also loved when, I think it's beloved by all, the continued repetition of, "It wasn't me, it wasn't."
Yes.
I just, my heart breaks fresh every time I hear that final, desperate,
just raw,
furious, like, the way that you can hear him trying to convince himself it wasn't me, and he wants that to be true so bad, and maybe if he says it right, it'll manifest as truth, and maybe he can convince himself and his conscience that it's true, and that'll fix it. Will that make the guilt go away?
Right.
Oh.
This is legitimately one of my favorite, I guess, like, delivery elements, or like, I don't even know, it's not really a trope, it's like a device, I guess, is having a character say the same thing with different delivery, and like feeling how the different delivery changes, the emotion that they are going through. There's an example from The Good Place that is my fucking Roman Empire. It is the scene where Michael is going to good person classes with Chidi, and he gets really frustrated, and he's like, just, messing around, and Chidi finally is like, I don't accept your apology. And Michael's like, "Oh, what do you want me to say? You want me to say, like, oh, you were right?" And he's like really sarcastic, and Chidi's like, "Yes." And then Michael stops, resets, and says the exact same thing, but super genuine. And you can clearly see the change taking hold in him. And I love stuff like that.
Yeah, it's really, really good. And it definitely also it exemplifies so much depth of character and the range of an actor to be able to deliver those lines differently and to convey that feeling and emotion in the exact same words. I think it's a fascinating part of human storytelling, and that thing that makes us so human is that ability and desire to tell stories and the way that we tell them. I think it speaks to something very, for the sake of sounding like an idiot, it kind of makes me feel that primal creativity that I feel like humans have. Especially when you hear those repeated lines and your logic brain says, those are the same words I just heard, but your heart knows that it's
completely
different. Yeah. And that, by the way, that's something AI will never be able to get right. Just want everyone to know. You could not have Malevolent with AI.
No, absolutely not. But speaking of the delivery of certain lines, I know there's another one that that is now imprinted. I think it's up there with Arthur's, not death scream. What's the opposite of a death scream? When he comes back from being dead. And that is, "How could you not have?" And his voice breaks. Ugh!
The realism in that scream was so good. It's like upset me. It was so good.
Yeah. That one hit me right in the heart. And known angst enjoyer here, and also a writer myself. Man, when you get moments like that just pierce you through the heart, it's like, oh, that is so effective. That's so good.
Yeah, I think Arthur's delivery in this whole section was so it was so passionate, but that scream, how could
Yeah.
you not know? And I also, I mean, on that same vein, something I did want to mention was also John's response to that. Like he didn't think about that.
Yeah.
He didn't think about any of the consequences. He didn't think about the implications of what he was doing. It wasn't that complicated to him.
Yeah.
And in his mind, like the only person he thought about was Arthur.
Right.
And I really don't believe that it like that John was, you know, thinking of how many Faroes he was leaving fatherless the entire time he was killing. I really don't think that ever really occurred to him.
No, I actually was thinking because of the way that John has some of the things that John has said in this conversation, not in this episode, but in previous parts or previous chapters, I almost wonder if John thought that he was like killing the same Arthur over and over again in a way. I mean, I know that I think he said that that some of them were like a little bit different, and obviously there was like the one who called out for Eric, and then there was old Arthur, old Thur. So obviously there was some variation, but I the thought occurred to me that I wondered if because of the way that John's like, oh, I didn't even think about where they were coming from, like, and the way that he said, I want Arthur back when he finally decided to be good again, it made me wonder if he thought he was like killing the same Arthur over and over again.
Well, and I maybe, but I also because I also thought of that when I first listened. But when Cain talks to him, he
Hmm.
talks about he can bring him like so many Arthurs,
Oh
and I
yeah,
feel like
yeah.
Cain mentions specifically that his intention is to bring him multiple Arthurs. So I feel
Hmm.
like John kind of knew he was killing Arthurs. What interested me about that was actually John saying, "I want him to be alive again," and
Right.
Cain being like, "He's what the fuck? He's
He's
not
been
dead."
alive. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
because that took me off guard because I never thought that John was of the impression he killed his own Arthur, I guess. But it
I
makes
don't
sense
think
that maybe,
I don't think that he thought that he had killed his own Arthur. I think he thought that his own Arthur, had killed himself successfully.
oh, he wasn't sure if, you know, that,
If Arthur had survived,
yeah, because the king
yeah,
threw him out. Right, right, right,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Man,
Speaking
bummer.
of Cain, can we talk about the fact that he has this fucking incredible musical cue that haunts the narrative now when he gets
I
brought
miss
up?
Kane. I
And
miss
it's, oh
Kane
my
so
god, this
much.
again. This
I miss
again.
Kane. He's such a good. I don't know what happened. There was a switch that flipped on in my brain after the wager where I went, oh, actually, I want Kane in every episode of Malevolent from now on forever. And if I don't get it,
Well,
I'm going to talk about missing Kane.
my favorite part is that we only hear the like first several measures, and just that is enough to make the entire orchestrated full song play in the back of your head.
Oh,
God, Harlan with
for
his
how many
damn
times it was on loop.
musical
Yeah.
cues. Yeah.
I loved that we just get a few of those
Hmm.
horrifying high notes from the wager, very chilling that always come in to accompany little mentions of Kane. He's
Yeah.
so good. And I know that Harlan was right in saying that not using him too liberally is the key to enjoyment, but
Yes.
boy howdy, and like I fully agree, but my hedonistic brain is screaming. I miss
That
him
makes
so
it
much. He's such a
it
good
make
character.
it makes it even more of a treat when he does come into the narrative, you know.
Yeah, actually, Rose is in chat tonight and she says it's not even the wager, it's the piano only slow version. And I was going to
Ooh.
say, I don't know if I know Rose submitted a message. I haven't listened to it yet, but I was going to say that it's interesting. There's a piano only version of the wager. And I'm sure
Mm.
it is just because that's like the instrument that Harlan has most access to. It's easiest and it probably came, it did come from piano first. But I think it's very cool because it still draws a continued parallel between Arthur and Cain and the fact that there is definitely something to be said for like Arthur being the piano, John being the cello, and Cain playing the piano and yeah. So I just think
Yeah.
that was also very cool.
Yeah. Did you have any other standout lines that you wanted to shout out?
Yeah, I did. Let me see. Hold on. I have the transcript pulled up right now. Arthur's entire like concession to the fact that he knows what he should say and then he says it all and then he resolves like, okay, that is actually what I'm going to
Right.
do.
Yes.
Cuz
But
because we were
nothing.
all
Yeah.
speculating for a long time about what we thought Arthur would do, if he would forgive John, if this would be a like a bigger deal and like a longer conversation maybe. Would it
Yeah.
be something halfway between forgiveness? Would they get interrupted? Things like that. And I definitely appreciated that you almost got like there was a lead up, almost a tease where I
Yeah.
was thinking like, oh no, Arthur's not going to forgive him. He's going to end up saying like, I can't do this. I
Yeah.
know I should say that I'm going to forgive you, but I can't.
I
And
never should have opened that book all over again.
yeah. And but I love that at the end he did. I feel like I got the best version of Arthur's forgiveness. Like this is really what I wanted because I think it was necessary to explain to the audience why Arthur would possibly forgive this.
Yes.
And I think it was totally necessary for him to lay out Kane's plan and his manipulation and I mean they really go he goes right out and says basically to the listeners, go back and listen to Addison, go listen to the time that John comes back and Yellow and like all of that, because Arthur talks about, I do see now why watching me fall in Addison, why hearing how I failed Yellow hurt you so much, because you tried and fail as well, you tried to save him and failed, and you tried to fight against your nature and failed. The only thing we didn't have was the other to pull us back. And then he talks
Ugh.
about how, like, we can't control this anymore. We can't pretend we have a
Right.
say. And that made me think of voting. And I know this is maybe the inopportune time to be thinking of the meta, but like it made me think of how Arthur has been questioning from the very beginning of Malevolent how much of this is predestined and if
Hmm.
something like that exists, and how fiercely he's determined to wrench control of his life and his narrative and his story really, and to make sure that he feels like, I mean, I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul is so important to him. And he's here talking about how we can't control this anymore. All I can control is how I react to it, and I am choosing not to let him win, and
Yeah.
goes
And
into
I,
all of
I
that.
think that I think that that is such an important life lesson, honestly, because whenever I'm trying to help a friend through something and it's something that's out of their control, I try to, impart to them, like, you can only control how you react. Like, you can't control how other people do things, how other people think, how other people feel, but you can control how you feel. And there is power in that, but you have to realize its power.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm
So
surprised. I thought you were going to say that the mention of Noel was your carrot this week.
at least someone else said it, so I didn't start off saying it. I'm just saying he was mentioned first out of everybody that was listed. It was Noel, then Oscar, then Marie, whoever Oscar is. And
Obviously, that's who he likes best to least. No, I'm
it's the
just
guy
kidding.
who
I'm
comes
just
up
kidding.
first in his brain, and I'm just saying that it totally makes sense to me if Noel's gonna come back. And I think I have a real shot at getting to see him before Malevolent ends. And I'm not going to speculate any further than that, because if I do and it doesn't happen, I will be genuinely heartbroken. And so right now, I'm just assuming nothing else is going to happen with Noel, but I will see him before Malevolent ends. I do think he's going to come
I
out with
I
his big anime sword
uh-huh.
to
Yep.
strike Kane in the heart and win with the power of friendship.
I actually saw a very interesting theory floating around on the Invictus server that has to do with Charlie. Charlie might be there, maybe, but we
Well,
can
you
we.
can't not tell me. What's the fucking theory?
So, okay, so people have been theorizing about this. Also has to do with the vote. So I was gonna hold off until we got to vote talk, but I can tell it now, and then we can kind of meander towards vote talk. So a couple of people have picked up on the fact that the scar that Arthur has may not be the only interesting piece that he has. he may still have the wooden pinky with from the Dreamlands forest, and if he has that, or maybe even if he doesn't have that, that means that a piece of him is still in the Dreamlands. So therefore, he could potentially, there maybe is a copy of Arthur saved in the Dreamlands, and so there may be some fuckery where they end up going to the Dreamlands, and someone was like, "Oh, what if that's where Charlie is? What if the threshold has to do with like the threshold between like waking and dreaming or something? And what if they meet, they get to run into Charlie in the Dreamlands?" And I'm thinking, "Oh my God, don't let Charlie be in the Dreamlands anymore.
Don't put my boy back.
Don't put him back
Dreamlands.
there." But also,
No.
someone said the heartbreaking thing about like, "Oh, but what if they just missed Charlie? What if he was in the Dreamlands and they arrive and all they find is like a note from him or something?"
Oh my God, stop it.
Anyways, the theory thread in the Invictus server is bananas. It's bonkers in there. There is some crazy, elaborate theorizing going on in there. And I advise you to join the Patreon and go check it out.
Yes, and like, if you are already active in the theory thread, or if you've heard about it, or if you've just read and lurked or whatever, don't ever be afraid to put your theory out there no matter what anybody else says about it, because I've definitely seen people run in there with a theory and then somebody will come in and be like, "No, that can't happen because of XYZ." But this is Malevolent we're talking about. I don't care how much concrete proof people have. You legitimately never know what's going to happen or what's going to become validated or invalidated from chapter to chapter. And I especially think in the end game, this is where you want to theorize, especially if you've never done it before. Like, try and figure out what's going to happen next. I mean, you're probably not going to be right because so few people ever are on the nose about what happens next. But I think that it's always worth giving it a shot, and don't be discouraged by people who talk.
Hey,
What's
Queen.
That? What?
Check yourself. Listen to your own advice. You're always saying, "I don't like theorizing because I don't like being wrong."
I don't. That's just for me, though.
Oh, it's just special exception for Queen, of course.
Other
obviously.
People can be wrong, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I have to talk into a microphone for an hour every week, and if I'm wrong, there's a written record of it where everyone can point and go, "Ha ha, she was wrong with dumbass." And so, like, none of you guys have to put
what
up
they
with
do.
that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, what was your stick?
Worrying about John and Arthur separating. I don't know if I want this anymore. Like, it's so funny.
Did you want it in the first place? Were you a separator?
I don't.
You don't really have thoughts.
No, it's all. My brain is so smooth. It is like velvet.
Everyone's gonna dog on me for shitting on you, but what I meant by that was,
no, I know what you meant.
I meant he doesn't have desires. Like, he's not hoping for an outcome. Vol doesn't have dreams, really.
Yeah, I don't have dreams or ambitions. I just am sat to listen to Harlan tell this story. No, I'm a firm believer in fan fiction. So in that sense, anything and everything is possible. So therefore, I'm not really worried about what's going to happen in canon because I will always have fan fiction. However, I am worried about what's going to happen in canon because it matters and I care about this story. And so I think the thing is that John and Arthur separating has been teased, has been talked about, has been flirted with for the entire show. And now that they feel like it's actually going to happen, that makes me nervous. You know what I mean?
So you're telling me you're having a Peppers moment where she talks and talks and talks about how bad she wants Arthur to get fucked up, and then he gets fucked up and she regrets it.
Right. Yeah. But on the flip side, I will say I was talking on the server earlier, and I think so in the same way that them actually, thinking about what it will actually be like to be separated, that is, it is within their grasp now. On the flip side, they also talk about how we're not making it out of here alive. And that's made some people nervous, but I honestly think that this is a case in which by them saying that and acknowledging that they're not going to get out of this alive means that the subversive thing to do would be for them to get out of this alive. Just saying.
I think the longer we go, the more I believe in Nikki's theory that they're going to become some kind of supernatural team force that goes around the multiverse doing stuff. I think that makes the most sense to me right now.
Here for that. I love that idea.
But I also want to say that it's interesting. I don't know. Harlan, so he talks about this again. This is me begging you to listen to the commentaries for the 500th time on Autopsy. But in the commentaries, Harlan talks about how you correctly subvert expectations and tropes.
Yes.
And in the process of being able to do that correctly in a way that doesn't leave the audience feeling upset, betrayed, or doesn't cheapen the narrative, you have to show that you understand and respect tropes before you can subvert them. So he has to play out some tropes in order to subvert others later on.
Absolutely.
And that means at any given time, he could play something straight versus not, which means they could absolutely just fucking die. And here's my guilty admission is that when John was like, "We're not getting out of this alive, are we, Arthur?" I wanted to be like, "You fucks aren't alive right now." Like,
well, you're already dead.
What does that even fucking mean, John? And so I so badly thought, I thought the line after that was going to be Arthur going, "We're not alive now, John." Like,
right.
I just didn't realize it was going to be a serious answer. It's like, oh, okay. Got it.
What was your stick, Queen?
My stick is actually about the separation.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how I always talked myself into being okay with them being separated. I secretly, quietly, privately thought that Arthur would want to be separated a little bit more. Like, just a little bit, enough to where it would be kind of tip the scales in favor of separating because he misses his eyesight, because he misses his human life, because, for a bunch of very human reasons, and, some selfish and some not. And I feel like it makes sense for Arthur to really miss not having John in his head. And so I was always fine with them separating on the basis of at least Arthur kind of gets his life back in some capacity, or he gets things that he wants when they separate that matter a lot to him. But to hear him outright say that he kind of wishes they didn't have to separate ruined it for me. Ruined my personal comfort of Arthur being okay with separating. He just came right out and was like, "Would it be crazy if I said that, I wouldn't mind staying like this?" And I went, "No, Arthur,
no.
You're supposed to be a selfish asshole who doesn't care if you separate. Not like this. Not like this." So I was devastated.
Gus in the chat says, "Alas, character development."
Alas, goddamn character development got in my goddamn way. That was my stick, though, is the shattering of my personal comfort in thinking that Arthur would be okay with separating and John would be the baby about it. And eventually, I could totally see them separating and John having to go or whatever and them not seeing each other again. And Arthur being
no,
sad, no. but happy because he gets to go back to normal versus, John having been a god at one point and all that shit.
Yeah.
He's got his own issues to deal with. John's not really my problem, but Queen
is an Arthur stan. Queen doesn't care about John. She would not let him inside if he was locked out in the cold.
That's not what I meant. I just think that John, I've talked about John being it's just that he came from being a god, and that is so hard for me to get past when we're talking about John versus Arthur. And so I can relate to being human. I can relate and understand where Arthur's coming from.
Sure.
Way harder for me to do that with John. Way harder because he has the benefit of having eons and, he's limitless numbers of years old, and he has all this power and capacity at his hands. And now I know he's changed, but it doesn't change the fact that, if you were to right now separate them and put them both back in their respective vessels, John would have an enormous amount of power and knowledge and access. and Arthur would still just be a guy.
He'd
So
just
there
be a
is one
guy.
person in this arrangement that gets kind of the
Yeah.
shit end of the stick, and
No,
I kind of
he
am
gets his body
vying
and his
for
life
him.
back. Or I mean, in theory. Which
Yeah.
I think that in the grand scheme of things, in their respective perspectives, that's pretty much as good as whatever John would get for, getting back his god body or whatever.
His god body or
His god
whatever. I
body.
heard John's shredded. I heard he's fucking ripped.
I just listened to, we just released the Bro Life episode of Autopsy to the Public, and it was hilarious listening back to that. Oh my
Yeah, that's
god.
the hashtag bro life episode. It's
Yeah,
great.
very good.
My carrot, just very quickly, I'm very happy we finally got to hear Arthur's actual reaction, his actual unfiltered reaction to the horrible, devastating thing John did. I was so relieved that we didn't have to wait another fucking chapter.
Yeah.
I was equally happy that it felt like exactly, all the rage I came at last episode about how John and like forgiveness, and it frustrated me how people were so sympathetic to how bad John must have felt to do these things. That felt so validated by this reaction. I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
thank
By
God
Arthur's
Arthur
very
is
visceral
saying,
reaction. Yeah.
yeah, saying and demonstrating the feelings that I felt over John's big betrayal and his massive fuck up here. And like the fact that Arthur knows how hard it should be, it is to forgive John. And the fact that, I'm pretty sure in any less extreme circumstances, this would be it. I think if they weren't in the dark world already and Arthur did not know the stakes at play and the big cosmic scope of things, this would not have been something they could come back from. And so
Oh, no.
obviously all of this could only take place now. And I
Yeah.
loved that it was acknowledged in the narrative, like, yes, this is not something that would ever be forgivable under any other circumstances, but here I'm going to show you how we're going to make it okay. We're going to,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
obviously I mean okay in a very broad sense, but you get what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. At the edge of the cliff, at the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, very much like we have bigger fish to fry. And like Arthur said, none of this means anything if they don't save the
Yeah,
world.
if they don't stop Kane, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Shall we listen to some voice submissions and do
Let's
some
do.
poll stuff?
Yeah. Do you want to read off the poll first?
Yes, let's talk about the poll. So, this poll, chapter 272, was Keep It Hidden versus Reveal the Scar, with Reveal the Scar at 31% and Keep It Hidden at 69%.
Nice.
That's 413 votes total so far. This is a Sunday. It's pretty obvious that Keep It Hidden is going to win.
Is win.
Is win. Homestucks don't. You
No.
keep it the fuck down with that 413 shit.
They
I
know
see
who you
you.
are.
I see the dark heart of you. I was one of you once.
Yeah, the vote has been pretty much 60-30 or 70-30 the entire time since the moment the poll dropped. This has been another one of those votes that hasn't really moved, and there hasn't been a whole lot of campaigning for a flip or anything.
Yeah, I think it was not unanimous, obviously, because, that 30% of people count, but it was very easy to tell where people lie. And I think it's because hiding the scar seems like the safer option.
Yeah.
And I think all of us are on edge right now.
Yeah, yeah. I think it not only seems like the safer option, but also the more advantageous, the wiser option, because a lot of people have been saying that the scar is our bargaining chip, right? And so a lot of people have been saying that it's better that we don't expose our greatest asset, our bargaining chip, before negotiations have even started. On the flip side, some people have said, like, why the fuck will the doll maker even want to talk with us or, entertain doing anything for us if we don't show them something that interests them? So I can see where the argument for revealing the scar comes from, but I do think that it's more prudent to keep it hidden.
There were some people talking about, I think Key in particular, maybe, or Hydrus, one
Yes.
of the two. We're talking about the idea of like when you go to emergency and they ask you, have you been
Oh,
taking anything like
right.
illicit drugs or
Yeah,
substances
that
or
was
whatever?
Hydrus.
If you lie to them, they won't know how best to treat you and they could put you in a really dangerous situation. And Hydrus was trying to argue that this is similar to that, where, if we don't disclose that we have this scar, we don't even know what it is or where it came from, and how is that going to affect the doll makers' interactions with us, and if they need something
Mm-hmm.
from us as far as like DNA, or whatever
Yeah.
passes for that in the dark world, is that going to fuck up the process of getting this vessel for Arthur?
Right.
And I can totally also see where that comes in, but I did say, I think my argument to that was like, this isn't a doctor though,
Right.
and this is also like fully not, it's more of the fact that we're talking about a bargaining chip. And I think
Yeah.
that if it's going to be, I think if the scar means something, which we all know it kind of does
Yeah.
because it's been pointed out, it's going to come up. I don't think us just keeping it hidden for our first interaction is going to prevent us from like having Arthur show it to them
Utilizing it.
later,
Yeah.
or or
Yeah.
having it come up later. I'm not saying that's a choice we'll get to make. I fully think the scar is going to be out of our hands, and us voting to conceal it at first is just the determining factor of how this conversation goes
Mm-hmm.
versus later on in the process when they're making a vessel or whatever, how is that going to interact with it? I think it will come up when it's relevant.
My grackle, my immediate grackle, because apparently I can't go into poll chat on day one without spiraling into some ludicrous theory that has no basis in the vote itself. But my grackle this week is that if we don't reveal the scar, if we keep it hidden, then maybe we'll have to do like a fetch quest for the doll maker and get a bunch of like freaky things like the, hair grass and tree eyes and whatever else. And that means that we'll get to see more of the dark world and we'll get to spend more time doing stuff. We got to do all the side quests and make Malevolent as long as possible. So that's why I'm voting to keep it hidden.
Yeah, super grackle. I I think it's so funny that you don't have desires for how you want to see the show go. You don't have ideal endings, you don't have opinions on many things, but you will always come up with some batshit down the road logic if you look at poll chat on day
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Hey, it's not just me, okay? Don't act as if I am the only person crackling in the or in the poll chat.
No, but you don't really debate in there either, so it just is funny that you only go in there to shitpost essentially.
I go in there, I reach my grackle moment, and then I realize, oh, I'm not being useful or productive here. I'm gonna go. And then I
Yeah,
leave.
it's common knowledge that I'm in the poll chat pacing back and forth, and I kick people out if they're having too much fun and I don't deem them productive to my argument. By the
Yes.
way, for anyone who has trouble, slash tone indicator sarcasm. I actually haven't been very active in the poll mines lately because I'm burnt out, but we're not going to talk about that. So, anyway, I think we should listen to some voice notes.
Let's do.
Hi, Gogoat here. Any pronouns? This, I want this note to be coherent, but this chapter absolutely destroyed me, so it might be a little bit of a mess. So I'm going to start this note with a little quote from The Haunting of Hill House, which is an amazing show that you should watch. Forgiveness is warm, like a tear on a cheek. I thought about that quote a lot after this episode. That might just be because I watched it recently, I don't know. Anyway, forgiveness is kind, divine, as Booth John said, but it is, especially for Arthur in this chapter, really, really hard. Arthur was hurting a lot this chapter. That scream of "how could you have" is ringing in my ears still. I like to shit on Arthur a little sometimes, but this was definitely a moment to me that felt strikingly selfless. You can feel the warmth in his forgiveness, the want to forgive him, but there is also a lot of grief and pain in it. It's a really interesting moment, and there's so much complexity in it. I don't think I could untangle it properly, honestly. Arthur talking about how they didn't have each other, they really are each other's guide. They're moral compasses for each other. John is a literal person, but he is also like a conscience sometime, and Arthur is the same to him. We must provide our own light, but hey, it's nice that they're sharing when the other is a little lost. Also, I listened to this chapter after dropping my long-distance friend to the airport, so I took it great. Okay, bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you for your submission, Gogoat. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it was really sweet. And yeah, what a quote. Forgiveness is warm like a tear on a cheek. That's really lovely. And I can totally understand why that would come to mind listening to this chapter because you really do go from this intense anger and grief and sadness to acceptance and Arthur caring enough for his friend to recognize what he's been through and to want to help him process his grief.
Yeah, I think this chapter especially was a great. It was almost like putting grief and strife and the
Mm-hmm.
struggle of human existence into a little bottle in perfect
Mm-hmm.
display, because for me it was like the tension in the very beginning of the chapter, the giant climax of emotion, the pain, the anger, the fear, the frustration, and then by the end of the chapter we're talking about moving forward again already.
Yeah.
We're talking
Yeah.
about like we're reminded that we're still in the dark world and we're going somewhere and we have an objective and there's things to do. And that felt so true and real to the human experience of like you lose somebody or you do something terrible and everything's horrible and it feels like the world's ending, and then you have to kind of look up and you have to find a tissue box because there isn't one next to you, so you have to get up and move, and like
You have to move
your
on.
life
You
is,
have to
yeah,
keep
your
going.
life pushes forward regardless. And
Yeah.
that is kind of especially relatable when you talk about grief. You know, people always talk about like how am I waking up every day without this person here, and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to do the summary in the style of the five stages of grief, but I realized it was going to be so much more complicated. But that was a thought that came to mind when I was trying to sum up this episode.
Yeah, for sure. Let's listen to another submission.
Let's do.
Hi, Autopsy, Rosesofenvy, she, her. So I have a big love for How Far We've Come, the soundtrack, and I heard the first note of that, had to pause the chapter, screamed for a minute, because I knew from hearing that first note that we were going to listen to How Far We've Come in its entirety. Now, we've had How Far We've Come, and it's been portions. We've heard the beginning moment with the piano. Sometimes it would go through the portion before the cello part. Usually it stops before the cello part because the cello is John. I think the last time we heard it in its entirety, and don't quote me, is the Goatswood when they were under Castle Carringford. I think that's the last time. I'm going to do a re-listen here soon, and I'm going to like mark down all the times I hear soundtracks because it's one of the things I've been wanting to do and haven't gotten around to. Anyway, I knew for a fact we were going to get this full moment because it needed it. This soundtrack, just as it did with Castle Carringford, perfectly fit the moment it was required for. So after, we hear through all the piano part, all the discussion, there's that pause before it goes to cello. John sobs, and then it goes to the cello part, and I think I ascended in that moment. Honest to goodness. I had to pause it again so that I could scream and then go back to listening. So that felt incredibly impactful, and I will forever be in awe of the way that Harlan includes the music with the podcast. The other things that just gutted me, John saying Arthur is his home, first of all. Second of all, the two of them mutually agreeing that they would be content staying together. They would be content as they are. I think that is incredibly meaningful. I think it's very important that we heard that said out loud. And the last thing is Arthur admitting they're not going to get out of this alive. I mean, they're already not alive, but they're not going to get out of this one. But to hell if they're not going to bring Kane down with them when they go. I think Arthur accepting that this is the end for them, but at least they can do something with it being their end. Gut punch after gut punch this chapter was. I don't think I'll ever get over it.
Rose, your submission's always 100% on the mark.
Yeah, I love hearing you break down the little nuances about how the music is used. It's very cool. And that your analysis and explaining to me the importance of it, that ascended me.
Yeah, I love hearing every time I hear music of Malevolent and it impresses me beyond what I've previously felt. I'm like, Rose, where are you? Rose, explain to me why I'm feeling what I'm feeling right now.
Right.
Rose. I think I even said it in the re-listen that we did before this episode of Autopsy started. I was like, I think I said something about, oh, the high notes of the wager, and I was like, Rose, ... Where's Rose?
Yeah.
Shall we listen to another?
Let's do.
Hello, Autopsy, AK Trash Panda, she, her pronouns, here with a real short one today. I just need a minute to scream about the way Harlan weaves together the themes and motifs of this mind-numbingly beautiful show. The core theme of this entire interactive storytelling experience is that indecision is paralysis and death, and that nothing good comes from not making a choice. And my biggest takeaway from this chapter is that, despite whatever else forgiveness might be, forgiveness is a decision. And I want to be so clear that I don't think every wrong deserves, or even should be, forgiven. Although I think you can argue that nothing that requires forgiveness deserves to be forgiven. But here, not forgiving is being positioned on the side of inaction. Inaction being the worst thing we can do as voters, inaction being what Arthur has to avoid at all costs, inaction being how Furrow died in the first place. Here, Arthur makes a choice, and making that choice leads to life and freedom for both him and John. Every vote, every decision we and Arthur have made thus far has been leading us to this moment where Arthur gets to learn how to forgive and make a decision on the side of life, and it's so beautiful, I could cry. I don't have a ton of poll thoughts this week. A lot of people much smarter than me have a ton of really good Lilith and Dollmaker theories. I'm leaning towards hiding the scar just because of the way John says if they see it, they may propose an amount we're not willing to pay. And if they don't want to give it up, I don't think we should be showing it off. That's it. Those are my thoughts. Bye!
Thanks, AK. Appreciate your submission.
I really, really, really love the point that you make about how forgiveness is a decision. But also, AK Trash Panda, why do you do this? Every time you send in a submission, you say like one sentence that is just so... just makes me wildly crazy. Just dropping the line, it's not even a full sentence. Inaction is how Furrow died? Oh my god.
Well, that's because
I need to sit down.
AK, like Zero Time, is an amazing writer. And that's the problem, is we keep letting good writers submit shit, and they hurt really fucking bad.
Oh, man.
Yeah, inaction is how Furrow died. I feel as though it is poignant that even though it may not have been planned, we are no longer at the risk of tying votes anymore, which represented inaction.
Yeah, that's true.
I feel like you could easily say it's because it's not an option right now. We don't get to be inactive.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
There is also no more, in the dark world, there's no more potentials for Rose to die. They're already dead.
Right.
Except for that one that's hanging out at her birthday party surrounded by corpses, I guess.
Oh, and AK Trash Panda also mentioned that there were a lot of smart people with a lot of really interesting theories about Lilith and the Dollmaker. And if this episode hadn't had so many like lines and so much emotional labor that we wanted to discuss, I would have done a little more digging and brought a few of those theories and ideas to the table. But as with previous times where we've been theorizing about Lilith or about whoever, the monster of the... not necessarily just the week, but the new monster on the horizon, I'm sure that next week we're gonna have way more to chew on as far as theorizing goes.
Before we end the show, I want to know, do you and look, I don't care if you don't actually have any desires or opinions, make some shit up, okay? Do you think we'll get to meet the Dollmaker in the next chapter?
Ooh, in the next chapter, I didn't think that was what you were going to ask me. That's a boring question. Ask me what I think the Dollmaker's going to be.
Oh my god! I had a line of questions I was going to ask you.
Okay. I'll play along. Okay.
Good
right.
Lord!
I think we are going to see the Dollmaker next week. I don't know if we're going to talk to them.
Fucking sassy as shit. Now, what do you think the Dollmaker is gonna be?
I want it to be a freaky guy. I want it to be a creepy creepy monster that talks. Like
I
real,
agree.
like spindly arms, like puppet master kind of vibes.
I had said that I was hoping for something Coraline adjacent with
Yes.
the other mother when she is in her like scary form where she's basically just bones
Yeah.
and she's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
spider coated.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly. That's exactly what I am envisioning too. And I really hope it goes in that direction.
Yeah. And I'm interested because way back when we were first learning about the doll maker, Frederick was like something about hair and eyes from trees, and
Yeah.
I thought for sure that was going to be a metaphor, and it turns out that it's fucking
No.
not.
Yeah, yeah. Fields of hair, eyes from trees. Yep. That's what's going
Ugh.
on in the doll maker's domain. Fun stuff. No, I genuinely can't wait to see what other supplies, I guess, the doll maker has
Well,
to
that
rummage
means
around.
if the doll maker, if those things were literal, what if Arthur is literally just going to be in a literal doll?
Curious.
I
Curious.
don't know.
There
Interesting.
have been some pretty persistent theories that somehow like Bella is going to be connected with the doll maker or is the doll maker or something. And I find those theories very interesting. I'm not holding my breath.
Neither am I. I don't think Bella's going to be in Malevolent, but I also don't think that it's impossible because nothing's impossible.
Nothing's impossible.
And
We're
I
in the dark
also
world.
I'm shocked that there's any doubt that that scratch is not Lilith or whatever piece of Lilith Arthur slurped up back in
Ah,
the
again with the
end
slurping. Always with
end
the
of
slurping.
end of season 5. So I can't imagine that it's not gonna be Lilith. I also was thinking like if the doll maker makes Arthur a body, we have a third wheel Lilith in there. What's gonna
Yeah.
happen? Is
Yeah,
are we
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
get yeah?
There have
So
been some really interesting like theories and ideas about what could happen that maybe like Lilith is going to become the voice in Arthur's head or that maybe like Lilith is going to need her own form and yeah, I'm really curious to see how this
or
plays out.
maybe we'll have to pick between like Lilith and Arthur, which seems kind of crazy, but
Yeah, and
not
also
again, not
choosing
impossible.
yeah, but also choosing between like John and Lilith seems kind of crazy because like I'm pretty sure except for, you know, the small minority that don't actually like either John or Arthur are gonna pick the boys.
And I also wonder maybe if it's going to be something about like maybe there won't be any issues giving Arthur a vessel, but it will do something to Lilith, and we have to decide whether or not we want to keep her as an advantage or and do do something good for Arthur, or if we do keep her as an advantage at some kind of nerf to Arthur, or
Hmm.
the other way around, like get rid of
Yeah.
her, but Arthur gets everything he needs.
Right. But I also find people have been bringing up that Arthur does have the Dreamlands wood pinky, and I think that that is a really interesting factor to consider if true, because it's possible that maybe he doesn't have it for some reason because his whole
We
body
haven't
got
gotten
destroyed.
a real description of anything that Arthur still has. It's not even really clear if I
John still
really
has
okay.
control over the hand and
Yeah,
the
because I
foot.
was just gonna
Yeah.
say, like, I really think the point of it is that nothing's really clear on purpose because it's the dark world. And so I think it's very much vibes of John and Arthur's senses really beginning to straight up overlap
Bleed
in a way
over.
that they
Yeah.
couldn't have in real life. So, like, John talks about, I think, smelling something in the dark world.
Right. Yeah.
And I know that he'd previously done that in season 1, but he I think it's more deliberate now that things are kind of
Hmm.
overlaying with each other because their bodies are not defined anymore. So
Yeah.
I don't know if Arthur's still all scarred up. I don't know if he still has his wooden pinky. I guess we'll find out, right?
Yeah. Mizra in the
Yeah.
chat says, "What if it's a whole part of with all of the polls for each chapter being a build a body choosing Arthur's new body?" See every time says like build a bear.
Oh my
Oh
God.
man, that'd be so great. I'd love that.
We'll do a little wish ceremony
Monster
where we all
Maker,
have
but it's
to
for Arthur.
grab Arthur's little red plush heart and spin around 12 times and sing Faro's song. Yeah. I just watched a documentary on Build-A-Bear, so that's me knowing too much about Build-A-Bear.
Gotcha.
Well, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you, of course, to Harlan Guthrie, the sole creator of Malevolent. Without his labor of love for a story he wants to tell, we wouldn't be here. To join the live recording, submit your own message, get in touch with me, and more, visit linktree/Malevolent Autopsy. The official Invictus Discord server is open to the public and includes a channel just for Malevolent Autopsy fans. We also have our own private, patrons-only channel. Finally, thank you to Mizra, Nikki, Vol Control, and everyone who has helped create and maintain Malevolent Autopsy. These friends are also volunteers who donate time and energy to help put together this love letter to Malevolent. The horrors persist.
But so do we.